This is part 2 of the most invasive species of North America. When it comes to species introductions, there is a reoccurring theme that I only slightly touched on last episode, and that is the consequence of releasing pets. There are several reasons that someone might release a pet fish. Sometimes when the fish outgrows the tank, the pet owner just can't supply a bigger one, or maybe just doesn't want to bother with it and therefore dumps the fish. Other times, the well-meaning pet owner is bored of keeping the fish, or maybe just done with the experience but can't bring themselves to euthanize their pet and therefore release it into the wild. Some people might even get a hold of a wild-caught fish, keep it at home for a few days, and then decide it's time to release the fish back and release it in a different body of water than they found it. Others might be undereducated individuals or maybe young kids that just think it would be a fun idea to introduce their pets nearby and establish a new population. Whatever the case, each one of these circumstances is highly illegal, and unfortunately most people just simply don't know that. I really believe that the majority of illegal introductions could be prevented by simply educating people on why it's harmful to introduce these invasive species. Some responsible alternatives to the examples that I have just listed are first and foremost to check your local laws and regulations and see what they suggest. Otherwise, you can find the fish a new owner or properly dispose or euthanize fish rather than releasing it. One of the most commonly released pet fish is the goldfish. Goldfish are actually closely related to the carp species, and if you watched part 1, then you already know why they pose a huge threat to damaging habitat and native species, as they root up vegetation, destroying aquatic plants and damaging water quality. Just like the other carp species, they are native to Eastern Asia. They are an extremely hardy and adaptable species, just like their cousins. Because they are cheap and hugely popular in the pet trade, you're likely to find them at whatever pet store is closest to you. That reason alone, mixed with the fact that they can thrive nearly anywhere, makes them a very common problem. I currently work for the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources, and while conducting surveys, the random places we find goldfish still continues to surprise me. For the purpose of this video, I'm using the name cichlid as a collective term for the hundreds of species of cichlids that exist, as they all share a similar story. Cichlids are a diverse family of freshwater fish, encompassing over 1,500 species. Known for their adaptability, cichlids inhabit a range of environments, but primarily tropical and subtropical regions. They are native to some tropical areas of Africa, Asia, and the Americas. Invasive cichlids are detrimental to ecosystems because they can outcompete native species, disrupt food webs, and introduce diseases. Their aggressive behavior, diverse diets, and ability to thrive in a variety of tropical environments make them successful invaders, potentially leading to the decline of native species and altering ecosystem structure. Because of their tropical nature, they are somewhat limited in the areas that they can become invasive, as most won't survive the cold winters of North America. But they do extremely well in the warm climates, especially in Florida. However, this doesn't make it impossible for them to be found in colder areas. For example, here in Utah, I know of several warm spring areas that have become absolutely overrun with introduced cichlids, as the waters stay nice and warm year-round. While these introductions aren't welcomed by any means, it's nice to know that the cichlids aren't capable of expanding their range anywhere outside of the hot springs. Most introductions of cichlids happen through the pet trade. When owners release unwanted aquarium cichlids into the wild, they can then establish breeding populations. Now for perhaps a more notorious invader, the northern snakehead. Native to parts of China, Russia, and Korea, snakeheads are air-breathing predators with an almost prehistoric look. They have long bodies, sharp teeth, and an eel-like swimming style. Their ability to breathe air allows them to survive in oxygen-poor water, and even out of the water for several days, as long as they stay moist. On land, they can wriggle short distances between ponds or streams, making them a serious threat for spreading into isolated water systems. In North America, snakeheads were first discovered in Maryland in 2002, but populations now stretch across parts of the Mid-Atlantic region, including Virginia, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and New York. They likely got here through the live food trade or aquarium releases. In some cultures, snakeheads are considered a delicacy and even believed to have medicinal properties. Snakeheads are top-level predators in freshwater systems, preying on everything from small fish and amphibians to crustaceans and even baby ducks. They can reproduce up to 5 times a year under the right conditions, and each spawning can produce thousands of eggs. Because they outcompete and prey on native species, they reduce biodiversity, shift ecosystem balance, and can cause cascading effects on the food webs. Next on the list is the round goby, a small invader causing a big problem. Native to the Black and Caspian Seas, this fish first arrived in North America's Great Lakes in the early 1990s, likely hitching a ride in the ballast water of cargo ships from Europe. At first glance, the round goby doesn't look like much. It's only about 4 to 10 inches long with a stout body. But these fish are tough, aggressive, and highly adaptable. Round gobies are bottom-dwelling fish that outcompete native fish like sculpins, darters, and log perch, as they compete for food and nesting sites. They also eat the eggs of other species including smallmouth bass and walleye. Due to their tolerance for a wide range of water conditions, they've now spread from the Great Lakes into connected waterways as far west as Illinois and Minnesota, and as far east as the St. Lawrence River. One unusual twist is that round gobies eat invasive zebra and quagga mussels, which has led some people to seeing them as a slightly good thing. But this actually helps bioaccumulate toxins in larger predator fish that eat the gobies, making the food chain possibly hazardous for wildlife and humans. Now, before I introduce this last one, I want to remind you of the definition of an invasive species, which in short is a species that has been introduced outside of its native range. So by that definition, invasive species are only invasive depending on the context of where they are found. This next fish is native to a good portion of the central and eastern US. However, outside of that region, it can be very disruptive. And that species is the largemouth bass. The largemouth bass is a double-edged sword, being both an iconic North American sport fish and also an invasive species in places where it was never meant to be. Native to the eastern and central United States, largemouth bass have now been widely introduced across North America and much of the world. This has happened through intentional stocking for recreational fishing. Their aggressive nature and reputation as a thrilling catch have made them a favorite for anglers, but when introduced outside of their native range, they can wreak ecological havoc. Largemouth bass are ambush predators, feeding on smaller fish, frogs, crayfish, and even ducklings. Their diet and hunting skills allow them to reshape fish communities and wipe out local amphibians and invertebrates. In fragile ecosystems, largemouth bass introductions have been directly linked to the extinction of native species. One example relating to this is in parts of California. The largemouth bass has led to sharp declines of endemic species like the California roach and endangered amphibians like the California red-legged frog. Largemouth are tough to remove once established. Their popularity with anglers often complicates conservation efforts, since local economies sometimes resist removal even when the ecological damage is clear. Like I mentioned earlier, I feel that educating people on why an invasive species is harmful and why releasing pets out into the wild is not a good idea is the best way to avoid expanded introductions of invasive species in the future. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching that video. I really appreciate it when you watch all the way to the end like that. If you haven't already, please subscribe. That just really helps out my channel and it'll help you see more of my videos. So if you like fish, please hit that subscribe button. And thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one.